This is the lesson for 3.5 truth tables for conditional and biconditional statements. Okay, I've written the song or the key for the conditional. That's true then false is false, all else true. And then the biconditional, true if and only if true is true, false if and only if false is true, all else are false. So for the biconditional, if both of the conditions are equal or the same, true and true, false and false, then it's true. If they're not equal, then it's false. Alright, so I've written the chart, the table for problem number 1. Remember that you start off with your column P and Q. P should say true, true, false, false. Q should say true, false, true, false. And your statement is written here. After you've done that, you need to box and label your final. And the two symbols on the outside of parentheses are a negation and a biconditional. So the biconditional is the dominant. So you would box and label it. Now you should number your columns. Remember, we have to complete everything on the left before moving to the right of the final. So this is the most dominant on the left, the negation, which means we'll do that last. So column 1 is P, column 2 is not Q, column 3 is the disjunction, and column 4 is the negation. And the negation will be based on whatever we write for column 3. Then we've finished the left side, so the only thing on the right side of the final is column P, which is 5, and then of course the last thing is column 6. To get the final, we'll look at the most dominant, or the last thing we did on the left, which is column 4, and the last thing we did on the right, which is the only thing we did, column 5. Okay, so let's start filling it in. Alright, so the first thing we'll do is we'll start adding values for column 1, which is P. So look here to P, and I'll write true, true, false, false. Okay. Column 2 says not Q. So look at Q and give me the opposite. So that would be false, true, false, true. The third column is the disjunction. Remember the or song. Or is false or false is false, all else are true. So let me change my pen color. We'll go back to blue here. And let's do evaluate the disjunction. So the false or false would be row 3. That's going to be false. There are no others, so the rest are true. Okay, we'll change the pen color again. We'll make it green this time. And now we'll evaluate the negation on the outside. Since it's on the outside of the parentheses on the left, it's the last thing you do on the left. It is the most dominant. So you look at that and you take the negation of the last column you did. So looking at this blue column, we take the opposite of that. So it's going to be not true, so that makes this false. Not true, false. Not false, true. Not true, false. Okay, so we've completed the left side, and now we move to the right side of the final, and that just says P. So P is just true, true, false, false. Pen won't write. There we go. False, false. All right, the final answer. And I'll pick another color. I don't have much to work with up here. Maybe we'll go to a fancy one. How about that? How about we choose that? All right, the biconditional. Okay, we're going to compare the most dominant on the left, that's the green column here, the negation, with the most dominant on the right, the other green column. That's why I think it's beneficial for you to use colored pencils, because notice I want to compare the same colors. So I'm looking at the green columns and evaluating the biconditional. Well, recall that the biconditional song is, if they're equal, it's true. If they're not, it's false. Well, that's a false and a true. That's not equal, so it's false. This is a false and a true, also not equal. That's false. True and false not equal. That's false. False and false there. That is the equal, so this would be true. So your final column there is false, 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 true. Let's do one more example. Notice that I've written the truth table, I've made the chart, and I've written my statement at the top, and I've filled in my initial P's and Q's. So the next thing to do is to box and label the final. Well, the three symbols on the outside are conjunction, conditional, negation. Of those three, the conditional is the highest dominant, so we would box and label that as the final. Okay, so now let's start numbering. Okay, so column 1 is going to be P, column 2 will be Q, column 3 will be the conjunction. We finished the left side, so move to the right side. Remember that this is the most dominant on the right side because it's outside parentheses, so we've got to do it last on the right. So this is going to be column 4 for Q, column 5 for P, column 6 for the disjunction, and then finishing up the right side is the negation with column 7. Column 8 will be the last or the final column. Now, let's look at what makes the final column. To evaluate the final column, remember you need to look at what's the most dominant on the left, which was the last thing we did there, which was column 3, and the most dominant on the right, which is the last thing we did there, which is column 7. So to evaluate column 8, you're going to look at column 3 and 7. Well, how do you get 7? Well, remember, you do it on the last thing you just did. So to evaluate column 7, you're going to be looking at column 6. So now you have your plan. Let's start to make our truth table. Column 1 is P, so that's going to be true, true, false, false. Column 2 is Q. Well, that's true, false, true, false. And now you want to evaluate your AND. Okay, so my AND, remember the song, true and true is true, all else is false. So here's a true and true. No other true and trues, so the rest are false. Okay, I'm going to move back to my blue pen and do the right side. Column 4 is Q, and that would be true, false, true, false. Column 5 is P, so that's going to be true, true, false, false. Then column 6 is the OR column. So change pen color to red. Well, don't need red because I don't want it to be the last thing. Let's make it green. Okay, we want the disjunction, so remember the disjunction song. False or false is false, all else are true. Well, row 4 is false or false, so we're going to put a false there. The rest are going to be true. All right, now we're going to switch back to our red pen color. And the last thing that we do on the right side is the negation. Remember, that needs to be off of the green column. So not true is false, not true is false, not true, again false, not false is true. Now I need to evaluate the final. Okay, so the final, we'll make that funny color again. And this is your conditional, so remember your conditional song. True then false is false, all else is true. Okay, well, look for a true then false. Remember, I'm going to use my red columns. That's why I color-coded them. The most dominant on the left with the most dominant on the right. So true then false is false. The rest of them aren't that, so they're all true. And you're done.